the political views of Mr. Provost, who is now Pope Leo the 14th. And it says here, talks about the political views or the possible political views of this guy. And it says here, then came the stunning arrival on Thursday of a new pope, an American, Chicago-born, and a prelate whose priorities for the church seemed to place him in the mold of Francis. So if this guy is going to be another Francis, then we're gonna have another Francis. And this guy is going to be at odds with the American right, and the Vatican will just be the same punching bag for the right wing that it was during Francis's papacy. And it says here, he is potentially another countervailing voice against the country's newly powerful strain of right-leaning Catholics. And so, in the American Catholic world, there is this phenomenon. It's very interesting to see, and I've been noticing it for a very long time, for over a decade. And that is this phenomenon in which you have the Vatican, and the Vatican is spewing out liberal ideas, left-wing ideas that are to the rage and to the ire of the American right. And then you have this faction of American Catholic, or really I should say North American Catholic, because a lot of Canadians are involved in this stuff. North American Catholic media that comes out and says, screw the Pope, right? To hell with the Pope. He's evil. He's a piece of shit, whatever. They hate the Pope. They hate him. And those people it's very interesting because those people are they're in an interesting predicament, right? Because they're a part of this institution, but at the same time, they're bashing the institution. And they're trying to live in both worlds. And it's very interesting to see this. But this sort of phenomena, I think, began with Michael Voris. Michael Voris is no longer really around because he was exposed as a liar and really as a member of Sodom. And he lied about being a member of Sodom. He said he wasn't a member of Sodom anymore, but he actually was a member of Sodom. You guys know the story. St. Michael's Media is no more. It's done. It's gone. But you have this whole industry of right-wing Catholic media. And if you have another Francis, all these right-wing media outlets are going to have a ton of content. We've just given them enough content for the next 10 plus years. But imagine if we get a right-wing pope who's saying exactly what the right wants to hear, then the right really doesn't have much content. There's no war, there's no battle. And Donald Trump wouldn't have any reason to bash the Vatican. And if Donald Trump doesn't have a reason to bash the Vatican, well, then the war against Donald Trump is really just a war between Trump and the Democrats, and the American right can no longer or would no longer be able to say that, well, the Pope is now a part of the World Economic Forum, and the Pope is representing the New World Order, and the Pope attacking Donald Trump is reflective of the New World Order declaring war on Donald Trump, and we're in this war between American Christian patriots and the evil New World Order. And if you have a conservative Pope, that just fizzles out. It's gone. It dissipates. But if you have a Francis Pope for another 10 plus years, then that's 10 plus years of material to use to bolster the right-wing position. So if you have a liberal Pope like Francis, that's going to help the right, because it's going to give the right cannon fodder to use. It's going to give the right material to use to amplify its own position. The right can then say, well, look, we have the Vatican is a part of the New World Order. The Catholic Church is a part of the New World Order, and we're fighting against it. We're in this war against the World Economic Forum, and the Vatican is a part of the whole Klaus Schwab conspiracy. So anytime you have a massive institution like the Vatican attacking right-wing positions, that actually helps the right, because it gives the right wing material. If I continue to bash someone that I don't like, I give that person attention and I give him legitimacy to a certain extent, because I'm taking him seriously. Do you see? That's the thing. That's the problem with excessively bashing someone. If you always bash someone, you actually help them. And so if the Pope comes out and he's bashing Trump and he's bashing the right, he's bashing conservatives, the conservatives now have more material to use to play the victim card or to make it out like there's this whole conspiracy against them, and that makes them look more powerful. And that does make them more powerful, actually. So it says here, waves of Catholics left the church following revelations of widespread sexual abuse by clergy, and American culture overall has become more secular. Today, about 20% of Americans describe themselves as Catholic, a share that has remained stable over the past decade, according to the Pew Research Center. And that's pretty substantial. 20%, that's huge. But how many of those Americans are actually going to church? I doubt most of them are actually even going to church. A lot of the Western Catholic world is dying, like a tree that's dying, like branches on a tree that are becoming dead wood, just how the Bible describes Israel becoming like dead branches that are then cut off. And remember what St. John tells the religious leaders. He says, the axe is laid bare, and the tree that bears not good fruit is cut off and thrown into the fire. And St. John was saying this in regards to the religious institution. The religious institution in Jesus' day was becoming dead wood. And that dead wood was thrown into a fire when the temple was burned down. And the Roman Catholic Church is becoming dead wood. And you go to, for example, Western countries, not just the United States, but you go to, let's say, Spain or Italy. These are traditionally Catholic countries. They have a very long history of Catholicism, especially Italy. Italy having the actual central headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church. And you go to the Roman Catholic churches in Italy, and they're mostly dead. I mean, I spent 3 weeks in Italy, and I went to a lot of Catholic churches. Do you know how many churches I saw that were filled? Only one. The whole time I was in Italy, I only went into one church that was filled with a lot of people. And it was in this small city. I don't remember the name of the city, but it was in I want to say it was in Emilia Romagna, I believe, but it was a packed church. A lot of people. But other than that, all the other churches I went to, dead. A few elderly people in there just praying, and you'll see some tourists there, and that's it. They're dead churches. I mean, the churches in Italy are tourist sites because they're super old and they're relics of history. A lot of these churches in Italy are centuries old. They go back to, I mean, some of them go back to even the Renaissance time. And a good number of them go back to medieval times. We're talking seriously ancient churches here. And most of them are dead. The Western Catholic Church is dying. And the only movement that I see in the Western Catholic world that's actually bringing life to the church is the American conservative or the Western conservative Catholics. Those are the only people that I'm seeing actually trying to revitalize the Catholic world in the Western world. I'm not talking about the Philippines. Philippines is, I don't know, it's kind of a gay country. I don't really take that country seriously. But you look to the United States, Canada, these countries, it's really the conservative trad Catholics who are bringing revitalization to the Catholic world. And yet it is that faction that has been the most ignored. The people who are crazy about the Novus Ordo, they're flaccid. And you go to a lot of these Novus Ordo churches, they're dead. No one's really going to Novus Ordo churches. Why? Because Novus Ordo churches are boring. They are vacuous of any sort of vitality and zeal. They're just mundane, jejune, dead places. There are very little icons in Novus Ordo churches. There's no beautiful artwork in Novus Ordo churches. The altars in the Novus Ordo churches look like dead works of art in some mausoleum somewhere. They're just dead places. They're dead churches. Whereas when you go to churches where you have the traditional Latin rite, the traditional Latin Mass, those churches are packed. I remember going to several traditional Latin rite churches where they had the traditional Latin Mass, and they were always packed on Sundays. Always. They were always packed. Why? Because people are thirsting for beauty. Christianity is not just a religion of, well, you go and you pray. Christianity is a religion of beauty. There was a wonderful book that was written on this by the French romantic writer. His name was René de Chateaubriand, or René de Chateaubriand, and he was a man who survived the French Revolution. He wrote a beautiful book called The Beauty of Christianity, a wonderful book that I would highly recommend anyone to read. And he wrote about the beauty of the Christian religion, the beauty of Christian aesthetics, and how it enriches the soul, and how it revitalizes people, and how it awakens something in us that thirsts for the divine and thirsts for God. We are naturally wired. We are wired to appreciate and love beauty. It's why, for example, when a beautiful movie is made, generally people will be able to recognize a beautiful film. I mean, everyone agrees that Gladiator is one of the greatest films ever made. Everyone agrees that Saving Private Ryan is one of the greatest films ever made. Everyone agrees that Hereditary is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Well, what do all these films have in common? They all have a beauty to them. All these films have an art to them. All these movies have a very well put together aesthetic to them. And we thirst for that. Why do we thirst for this? Because we as human beings are reflections of God. We are made in the image of God. And who is God? God is an artist. So therefore, we naturally desire artwork. But the church, the Vatican, insists on ugliness. It insists on being absent of beautiful icons. It insists on just making the churches look like mausoleums. And it's ugly. And so I think if we really want to see, if the Roman Catholic Church really wants to see a true revival, I think it needs to really throw away the Novus Ordo Church and replace it with the traditional Latin Rite. And I think you would see way more people coming back to the church. I think you would see a huge revival in Roman Catholicism in the Western world. I really believe that. I truly believe that. Churches are museums, yeah, especially in Europe. Churches are definitely museums in Europe. Rabbinic text C2, okay, I already read that. I was considering Orthodoxy because of him, but honestly, I don't know which church is right. Flaccid, yep, that's the word that fits them. But isn't that the falling away? What's the falling away? The Novus Ordo? I mean, the whole thing is the falling away, right? Registered Republican Provost. Yeah, Provost is a registered Republican. I did read this. And again, because he's a registered Republican, that leads me to say that it is very possible, not very, but it is possible that this Pope could reverse Francis. He could become the opposite of Francis and shock everyone. That is a possibility that I want to keep in mind here, because it is a possibility, and I don't want to not recognize that possibility. That's what I'm saying. So it says here that the website LifeSite News published 5 worrying things you need to know about Leo the 14th. So the right-wing Catholics are already going after this guy, already exposing him. I mean, that was going on literally minutes, if not seconds, after it was announced that Provost was Pope. So it says here that still, Catholic doctrine does not map neatly onto American political disputes, and it's not clear whether Pope Leo will have his predecessor's appetite for sparring. Inserting himself directly into the American political landscape could be thornier for an American. And I'm not really certain how this would be thornier, but just because Provost is an American doesn't mean it would be more difficult for him to go against the president. But if the conspiracy theory is true, and the Vatican is controlled by the CIA, then it's likely that Trump could be using this Pope as a mouthpiece for MAGA republicanism. But if you look at what a lot of the media has been saying, it looks like this guy's just going to be another Francis, right? That's what it looks like. It's controlled by the CIA. So let's say it's controlled by the CIA. And I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it's controlled by the CIA. Let's say it's controlled by the CIA. If it's controlled by the CIA, then for what purpose would it be to have an anti-Trump pope? What purpose, right? Let's think about this for a moment. If the CIA wants an anti-Trump pope, why? Well, I think it would be because it would help Trump, because it would give Trump a battle. Because what helps Donald Trump? Battles, right? What helps Donald Trump is battles. His battle with prosecutors, his battle with judges, all those things help him. And when Francis was attacking Trump, what were the MAGAites saying? The MAGAites were saying, Francis is a part of the New World Order, and this is another reason why I support Trump, because Trump is an enemy of the World Economic Forum. He's an enemy of the New World Order. So if the Vatican all of a sudden becomes pro-Trump, then one can make the argument and say, well, wait a second, the Vatican isn't part of some anti-Trump conspiracy. Look, we have a pope that supports Trump. And that subtracts another battle that could actually help Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump appointed the pope, and the pope ends up being anti-him, that actually still helps Trump. Now, if you have a pope that's pro-Trump, that still would kind of help Donald Trump, because Trump could then say, look, the Catholic Church is on my side, and the Republican Party will get Catholic votes. So it's a win-win for Trump no matter what. That's what I'm seeing here. And it says here that he has signaled continuity with his predecessor, who challenged norms, embraced migrants and the poor, and sought to build an inclusive church. So it says here that during his papacy, Francis opened more leadership roles to women than did any previous pontiff, and established commissions to study the possibility of women becoming deacons. And so it says here, Francis also turned to then Cardinal Prevost, tasking him with overseeing a revolutionary reform that added 3 women to the voting bloc that decides which bishop nominations go forward to the Pope. So this guy's job was to oversee, was to superintend a reform by which 3 women were added to the electorate to appoint the Pope. So there is this feminist agenda that's at hand here, and Mr. Prevost is a part of it. But Francis maintained clear limits, repeatedly affirming that, we're not going to have women priests. No, we're just going to have ladies electing the Pope. And yeah, great. This is how it begins. So it says here, then Cardinal Prevost once urged that society move from words to action to address the climate crisis. So he's with the whole climate change agenda, like Francis. So we can expect this guy to come out and say, we're hurting Mother Earth, and he might even bring up the term Mother Earth like Pope Francis did. And Pope Francis spoke of Mother Earth. So you have that. But here's the one thing good that's come out of this mouth that I've seen so far when he was Mr. Prevost, before he became Leo the 14th. It says here, in a 2012 address to bishops, Leo and said Western news media and popular culture promoted sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at odds with the gospel. Note, for example, how alternative families, these are the words of Mr. Prevost, note, for example, how alternative families comprised of homosexual partners and their adopted children are so benignly and sympathetically portrayed on television programs and in cinema. So he has gone against the gay agenda. And a lot of trad Catholics are jumping on this quote, and they're already making memes about it, and they're saying, oh, look, based Pope, whatever. Now, he spoke against the gay agenda. Does this mean that he's going to be this based Pope? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Here's the thing is, generally speaking, priests will say things that are pro-family values. Don't just look at their words, look at their actions. Yes, this guy did say things that were true, but at the same time, let's not forget that this guy covered up for a pedophile. So, as far as I'm concerned, this guy is just part of the same evil system that Francis was a part of.